Hi everyone, we're here in Memorial Park in El Paso, Texas. I'm Michael Hughes and this is Jake Droz joining me today. Today we're going to talk about a topic a little bit different from what we normally discuss, and this video is going to be focused on soldiers, active duty soldiers, and any military members that are PCSing to El Paso that may not be familiar with the city. We're going to talk about some of the places around base, some of the lifestyle things that you can expect here as a soldier, and just El Paso in general, from the point of view, from the lens of a service member or an active duty soldier coming here. So just to give a little background on me, I was actually PCSing here in 2014, 2015, and I was basically brand new to the city. I had actually came here for a 3-week trip back in 2013, and I decided to come to El Paso. I decided to PCS to El Paso as my first duty station because I really liked the city a lot. I thought the base was pretty good when I was there, and compared to a lot of the other Army bases, El Paso has more of like a city environment and a lot more stuff to do here compared to a lot of the places that you can go in the Army. So that's why I chose to come here, and we're just going to talk about a little bit about our experiences, some great things to do, and how we like El Paso and how we liked it as soldiers. We're both veterans right now, but Jake, if you want to kind of tell us your story a little bit.
So I got to El Paso in late 2015. I was actually supposed to go to Fort Hood at first. I heard it was super close to Austin, which it's close, but not that close. And all my friends were coming here. And everyone who I talked to said El Paso is a hidden gem. So I was lucky enough to switch, and I came here, and it was the best decision I could have made. So unlike other military bases across the country, El Paso or Fort Bliss is actually in the city. It's part of the city of El Paso. So a lot of the other places, I mentioned Fort Hood, it's about an hour away from Austin. So, not saying, not knocking Fort Hood, but we actually have El Paso right here. So we have a ton of things to do: restaurants, bars, nice communities, different parts of the city. We have parks. So everything is right here. We don't have to travel far. So that's why I like it a lot. And then it's easy for spouses to come here too. If you're in the military, your spouse will probably have more opportunity here because they don't have to travel far to get to the city to find a job. Maybe they have a very specific career field. So that's why I like it, and that's why it benefited me and my family.
Yeah, that's actually interesting too, because when I was at Fort Sill, it was the same thing. Like, oh, you're near OKC, but it's like, well, it's actually like an hour and a half away, and Fort Bliss is like, it's like 5 minutes from like downtown basically. So yeah, great point. And speaking of different areas too, so some of the areas that we recommend a lot for like military families specifically, or really just like really popular areas for military clients due to like the proximity to Fort Bliss, would be the Northeast, like the 79934, a couple of other parts in the Northeast. The 79938 is probably like the most popular area for military clients, for our buyers, because like it's very nice, great houses, like they're relatively new, a lot of like parks and a lot of like new amenities are being built up out there as well, and it's kind of right there next to base. So the good thing about Fort Bliss, it's like pretty centrally located, so you can have like the Northeast and the East side, and you're maybe 20 minutes depending on like where you work at on base. And the Fort Bliss is pretty large too, so you'll have like your main post, or some people call it like West Bliss, and then you'll have like East Bliss, which is like where like a lot of the armor units are and stuff like that. So depending on where you work, you're probably no more than like 20 minutes.
Yeah, so depending on where you work, you might want to consider different parts of the city. If you're working on main post or West Bliss, the West side is a great option. The Northeast is another great option. Those will probably be your quickest commutes. The Northeast is the quickest.
Yeah.
West side, depending on where you live, it might be 20, it might be 30 minutes. From the east side, it's a little further from West Bliss, but if you work on main or on
right there,
East Bliss, where the 1st Armor Division is, you would probably want to consider the Northeast or the east side of El Paso. And like you said, the east side has the most amenities. It's also the newest part of El Paso. That horizon, they have a ton of new construction homes. So a lot of military families like to move into newer homes, and And they also have the most affordable prices in town.
There's a lot of other great neighborhoods too, not just those, but you can always talk to us if you're like interested in maybe somewhere else, and we'll definitely steer you away from anything that's like negative or bad. Or there's not really many places that are unsafe here. Personally, like I think we have like one of the safest cities compared to a lot of the other bases too, especially like what I hear from people that have been like Benning or, you know, really Fort Bragg or whatever. Yeah, we don't really have like a Vietnam or Fayetteville or whatever they call it.
Or Killeen.
Yeah, it's definitely like a lot nicer than those places. So I know we're like close to the border, so people always talk about like, oh, I don't want to be that close to Mexico, but really anything that happens as far as crime and things like that, it's gonna happen like in Juarez. Like it's not really gonna be here in El Paso. I haven't really seen anything like that. I've been here like 7 years now, so
I haven't seen it either. You know, especially with what you see on the news, the border region has sometimes a negative connotation, but
yeah,
you know, not once have I ever felt unsafe here. I would say being on the border is definitely a huge benefit to being stationed at Fort Bliss, because we have such a excellent multicultural community. So, you know, from a cultural perspective, this is one of the most unique places you could be stationed. From great food to the festivals, you know, it's very family oriented here as well, which is great. You know, the people like to call El Paso the biggest biggest small town in America. So it's very family oriented, and you could feel that. It's very welcoming as well.
Yeah, definitely. El Paso is probably one of the most unique bases if you think about it, like your proximity to Mexico, just different culture, different community here versus a lot of the other bases that you could go to. So it's definitely unique in that aspect. And something that I liked, I'm from the East Coast, like a lot of the soldiers come from like the East Coast, like the eastern part of the United States, just kind of, that's the population breakdown of the US. And coming out here, it's really like a Southwest feel as well. So there's a lot of things that I was able to do here as far as like exploring the Southwestern United States. And you can do that pretty easily from El Paso. Like not only the stuff around here, but there's a lot of national parks I've been to, like in Arizona and Utah and New Mexico. A lot of cool stuff that you can do that, you know, it's not too far. You could drive there, make like a road trip from El Paso. So that's another thing that I really liked about being stationed out here as well.
And if you wanted to get out of the desert, you know, you could drive an hour and a half north and go to the mountains in New Mexico where they have beautiful forests.
Yeah, definitely. That's like pretty close, like completely different environment from like kind of the desert landscape.
Skiing, mountain towns.
And we have the Franklin Mountains like right here too. You can go hiking or whatever. So there's a lot of different outdoor activities that you can do. So a lot of the amenities on base too. Another reason I actually chose to come to Fort Bliss, El Paso when I was PCSing here, or I put my preferences in. You don't really choose in the Army, but I was really impressed with actually Fort Bliss. It was really cool. Like we had Freedom Crossing there. That's like the PX commissary like area. And it's like, dude, that's like a little town in of itself. There's like a movie theater, a huge food court. So I think it's like actually the biggest PX, or if I'm not mistaken, like in the Army.
It's the first of its kind type of shopping center, all-inclusive shopping center where they have restaurants, food court, they have the commissary, the PX, different stores. It's kind of like an outdoor mall that they have there. So it's a great place if you live on base, or you know, maybe you live off base but you have to stop at the store. You know, you have pretty much everything you need right there on Fort Bliss.
Yeah, a lot of like cool entertainment options too, and a lot of the facilities, at least where I worked on base, was like super nice, very good offices, you know, great training facilities. Like it's not run down at all. Like they take really good care of Fort Bliss specifically.
They do. And another thing I like about Fort Bliss is they have a lot of great gyms. You know, on Main Post, they have Milam Gym and they have Stout Gym. Stout is a pretty big gym. They have nice track there. And then they have Soto Gym on Main Post, and that's massive. Then they have the Ironworks CrossFit gyms. And then they have a state-of-the-art aquatic center, which I used to like going to it when I was in the Army.
We do hear some negative things about like El Paso, Fort Bliss too. I mean, not everybody likes it. Some people call it like Hell Paso. I've heard that before from like soldiers.
It's hot here.
It is hot here, yeah. I mean, I actually kind of like the weather, but it's not like, we have seasons here. I'm from Florida, so it's like always hot. We actually have like a winter time here, and it's not like super humid all the time, so that's nice.
Well, a lot of soldiers have a negative connotation. They say, well, there's nothing to do here.
Oh yeah.
So, well, what do you like to do? We ask. And then they say, well, there's just nothing to do. So I stay in my barracks room, or, I don't go out much. Well, that's why it sucks. That's why there's
Kind of
nothing
that,
to do if you don't put yourself out there. So, I mean, my recommendation is be a part of the community. Get out, join clubs, be a part of something, meet people. And then your time here will be drastically better and you'll really enjoy it. I think anyone who gets out there into the community, they'll think Fort Bliss is one of the greatest places to be stationed.
I definitely kind of see that mentality a lot too in the people that are complaining about it. It's like they don't ever like leave posts, go out and do stuff and talk to people. And most people here are super friendly. They'll come and talk to you. And I think as far as like relationships between like El Paso and Fort Bliss, it's generally a pretty positive one. Definitely make some effort to go out there and find some stuff to do. There's plenty of options.
El Paso's a very military and veteran friendly community.
Yeah, there's a lot of veterans here too. Like there's some like us, right?
Like us.
There's a lot of veterans that actually end up staying in El Paso. Like me, I liked El Paso a lot. After I ETS'd, I was like, hey, I'm gonna stay here. So there's like a lot of good veteran resources as well if you do end up like ETSing here. So we're retiring as well. There's a lot of retirees too. So probably one of the other like negative complaints I hear is from the spouse perspective that like it's hard to find a job here. You have to speak Spanish. That's not necessarily true. I mean, it probably does help if you speak Spanish, but my fiance was able to find a job here. She worked in a bank and she didn't speak Spanish, but like she learned enough to just get by and it was totally fine. She got hired like pretty easily, I think. So there's the good thing about the job search here, there's a lot of different positions that really need to be filled, especially right now. I would say there's somewhat of like a labor shortage. So they're definitely like looking for people to work here. So like in whatever profession, if you're like a teacher or a bank teller, like whatever you're doing, there's definitely some vacancies that need to be filled here by competent people. So even if you're not like fluent in Spanish, like you should be fine, I think.
Yeah, El Paso is one of the biggest, bilingual communities in the country, probably the biggest in the country, probably one of the biggest in all of North America, I would say.
Yeah.
So, most people here speak English, so it shouldn't be that big of a deal if you only speak English. Most people could understand you, you could get by. So one of the other negative things about Fort Bliss that some people might say would be our proximity to other major cities. Texas is a huge place, so I've had friends going to Dallas and then they will hit me up and say, hey, let's meet up, maybe we could get together. And they don't realize that El Paso is actually about 10 hours from Dallas driving. So it's not that easy. So for us to get to other major cities, we need to take a flight. Luckily, we have a very convenient airport right in the central El Paso. So it's as easy as hopping on a flight to get to Dallas or Phoenix. I think we have direct flights to LA and Seattle, Chicago, Atlanta. So we could get to a lot of places, but as far as driving, the closest city nearby is American City is Las Cruces, New Mexico.
Yeah. Overall, there's a lot of positives, some negatives like we hear sometimes, but I think those can be overblown a little bit. I really loved living in El Paso. I chose to come here and then I chose to stay here. And I know a lot of like active duty and veterans do that as well. So, definitely if you're PCSing here, it's a great place. If you guys have questions about the area or buying a home, we're obviously realtors, so we can definitely help you buy or sell a home if you need that. We'll leave our contact information at the end of this video. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. Please like and subscribe if you like the content. We'll be doing more videos in the future, specifically geared toward military life in El Paso, Texas and Fort Bliss area. Thank you.
And smash that bell button to get notifications.